Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. A nomination to Broadcom Masters is a huge accomplishment, and we're thrilled that you have taken the next step in the process by opening an application. I'm Raver Almadorai, Program Manager of the Broadcom Masters, here with my colleague Erin Cummins. Erin and I are responsible for the Broadcom Masters program, and you will receive emails from us throughout the application process. This session is being recorded so that other students who cannot join us today can also hear this information. Today, we're going to talk with some special Broadcom Masters alumni who were finalists a few years back and will tell us about their experiences continuing to pursue research and science fair beyond middle school. But before we get started, I want to give you a quick synopsis of the Broadcom Masters program itself.
Broadcom Masters is a program of the Society for Science and the Public, which is the organization that Reva and I work for. The Society for Science and the Public is a nonprofit dedicated to public engagement in the scientific community. The Society for Science and the Public also runs 3 distinguished science competitions. The first is the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, which is the world's largest international pre-college science competition and is open to high school students. Next, the Regeneron Science Talent Search is the nation's oldest and most prestigious science and math competition for high school seniors. Finally, we have the Broadcom Masters competition, which is the one that you have been nominated for. The Broadcom Math, Applied Science, Technology, and Engineering Rising Stars, or MASTERS, is the premier national science fair-based competition for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students.
In order to qualify, a student must place within the top 10% in a society-affiliated science fair. 30 Broadcom Masters finalists have the opportunity to spend a week in Washington, D.C., showcasing their research projects and competing as teams in hands-on STEM activities. We have several recorded webinars to walk you through the application process and answer your questions. You can find recordings of these in the Video Resources tab in your Fluid Review account. Now, without further ado, let's meet the alumni. So today, we are speaking with Chai Morali, class of 2014, and David Yu, class of 2015, who are here to talk to us about their experience as Broadcom Masters finalists, to share their advice for you as nominees through this process, and to answer your questions. Chai is from Ellicott City, Maryland, and won the first place engineering award in the 2014 Broadcom Masters for her project titled Saving the Aquatic Ecosystem from Oil Spill Cleaning Agents, a non-conventional approach, which explored different enzymes and bacteria that can clean up oil spills. In 2018, Chai was one of the top 40 finalists in the Regeneron Science Talent Search, competing with her project that investigated immunotherapy and leukemic cancers. Now, Chai has just finished her first year at Princeton University.
Our other alumni is David Yu from Denton, Texas, who won the first place in Mathematics Award at the 2015 Broadcom Masters for his project titled Stereoscopic Three-Dimensional X-ray Reconstruction Processing and its Application to Cancer Prevention. David competed at the Intel's International Science and Engineering Fair in both 2018 and 2019. Each year, he won special awards as well as grand awards in his categories. The second place award in environmental engineering in 2018 and the third place award in biomedical engineering in 2019. David is graduating high school this summer and will be attending Stanford University in the fall. Hi, Chai and David.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
All right, so now let's get started with a few questions. So we just gave a brief bio on each of you, but talk to us a little bit about what you've been up to since Broadcom Masters, and how did your Broadcom experience help you prepare for where you are now? Chai, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I went through high school, obviously after the Broadcom Masters competition, and now I'm at Princeton studying molecular biology. I would say Broadcom Masters gave me the confidence to continue pursuing my scientific passions. It was honestly an honor to be recognized for my project. But what I really took away from the competition was just like a sense of pride in my work, as well as the confidence to continue doing what I was doing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
David,
How about you?
Yeah. So after Broadcom Masters, I also finished high school, and I think one of the coolest things about Broadcom Masters, about the entire experience, is that it opens you up to all of these completely new ideas from people doing awesome research and in all different kinds of fields. And I think one of the most inspiring aspects of it is that it really opens up your vision, and that it shows you there's so many cool things being done in every aspect of every field. And so it really gets you involved in sort of doing scientific research. And so after Broadcom Masters, I did a lot of research at a local university lab. And so and one of those things was sort of just because I went to Broadcom and I saw, wow, there's so much cool stuff going on. And so it really made me want to get involved. And so that's kind of what made me want to do research.
Awesome. So I just want to say for everyone who is watching right now, if you have questions to ask both Chai and David, feel free to type them in the chat and we will try to get to them after we finish our questions. So the next question we have is, how did you start your Broadcom Masters project? I know that's thinking back a long time ago if you can remember, but or any project really. And how do you continue being motivated even during difficult times? Chai, can you start us off?
Yeah, actually, it's been many, many years, because this is maybe like 6 or 7 years ago at this point. But I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2010, there was actually a massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that became dubbed as the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Basically, an oil rig exploded and it caused massive devastation. And I remember as a kid watching the news full of like images of like these really massive iridescent oil spills and seeing like baby ducks covered in like grimy oil. And it was like honestly heartbreaking. But even though it was devastating to watch, I actually didn't really think much about it until I was forced to do a science fair project in middle school. It's although like having to do a science fair project kind of forced me to think about what I cared about. And at the time, I really wanted to see what I could do to help clean oil spills. So what I did was I did a lot of research on how like the government was cleaning oil spills, and I thought I could come up with a more safer and more effective way to clean them up. So that's what really got me interested. It was science fair. Like if I didn't have science fair, I'm not sure I would have actually tried. So science fair gave me the avenue to actually explore something I cared about in this case.
Awesome. Even if you were forced initially. All right, David, what about you? If you can remember your Broadcom Masters project, how did you start it, or any other project, and how did you overcome obstacles during difficult times?
Yeah, no. I can still remember a little bit about how I came up with it. So, I mean, I think it was really sort of just random events that kind of came together. On one hand, I was sort of interested in computer programming at the time, and I just got into learning how to do some very basic programming. And I thought, wow, I mean, this is very cool. This is something that I want to learn. And also another thing that sort of sparked my first project is that I got something called the Google Cardboard, which is, I guess these days, people have all these very expensive VR and Google or Microsoft HoloLens and all these very expensive equipment. But at that time, there was like a $2 cardboard box that you could fold together and put your smartphone in it, and you could basically see like watch a 3D movie. And so when I got that, I was pretty amazed by I mean, this is a very cool piece of technology, and it costs only $3. I mean, it's something that you can work with pretty easily. And so I thought, I was really interested in this kind of three-dimensional technology and being able to just explore sort of VR and augmented reality. And I wanted to sort of put what I learned with programming into something that I could work with three-dimensional technology. And so I guess my project sort of developed into looking at how we can use different kinds of computer algorithms to develop three-dimensional models of the human body. And in the end, I found, I guess unlike Chai, where she sort of found the problem and set out to solve it, mine was sort of just more of an exploration of something that I was interested in, and it ended up being that I thought in the end this has a lot of applications to a lot of medical fields where we can look at three-dimensional models of the human body. And so I think both methods work. You can either find problems that you're interested in and go for solving them, and you can also just explore sort of fields that you're interested in and see where that takes you. As for how do you go past difficult issues, or how do you overcome these obstacles, I think there's the first one obviously is don't give up. If you give up, then you're never going to overcome the obstacle. But I think also it's always don't never be afraid to ask for help. There's so many people who are more qualified, who know more stuff than you, and it's okay. I think it's very strong to be able to admit that you don't know the stuff, and so to ask people, to consult people, whether that's online and Stack Exchange or other forums, or just finding someone else, a friend or a parent who might be able to help you. I think always be willing to ask a question and always be willing to learn.
Yeah, I'm actually going to piggyback off of that, but you have to remember, like, failure is inherent to science. Like, nothing we have today didn't, like, came out of, just somebody immediately having a eureka moment. There are a lot of failures behind everything, but we learn, and you have to remember that it's a collaborative process. So you like use the resources you have. I remember several times I didn't know what I was doing when I started my looking into ways and how like oil spills were cleaned. I didn't know where to go. I was a young seventh grader, 11-year-old kid who had never read a science like research paper, and I needed help. And I remember asking my teachers and my parents, and they would sit me through different articles and explain to me how to understand them. So it's you should never be afraid to not know. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, that is. Thank you both. I think those are really helpful pieces of advice for students who might feel a little bit intimidated about continuing on in the research project, but definitely knowing that failure is just a part of the process is kind of what it's all about. So yeah, thank you both. So kind of expanding on what you did just talk about in terms of advice, I think you both know that the application deadline for this year is coming up in 2 weeks. So students are very eager to hear some more advice about the application process itself. So I know, again, it's been a while for both of you, but maybe thinking about back to that time, when you were just about to submit your application, can you think of any advice that you would give or that you wished you had received while you were working on your Broadcom Master's application to give to this year's applicants?
So actually, my choice to apply to Broadcom Masters was I actually don't remember why I chose to apply, but in the end, but I do remember just giving it all in my application. I decided to put like forth myself, like a version, like I decided to be honest in my application about why I cared and like why I chose to do what I did. It ultimately, like, don't try to like please, or don't try to fit your application to what you think someone will like. Fit it to like what you want to show about yourself. And I think being honest in your application is probably the best way to go about it. I honestly don't remember too much about the specifics, but in general, I would say have somebody read over it for like grammatical mistakes. You never want your writing to be hindered by a bunch of grammatical errors. So I think that's about it from my end.
No, that's great. Thanks, Chai.
I think mine is pretty similar. I think probably my very first piece of advice would be simply just apply. And I only say that half sarcastically because I know a lot of people, when you look at the application, you see that, wow, there's so many essays that I have to go through. It can seem really daunting, and that might make you want to give up or not even apply at all. And I think that's, don't do that. Make sure, no matter what, just give it all you got and just submit it, because You know, I mean, I wasn't expecting anything. I don't think anyone that I don't think anyone who ends up becoming a semifinalist or a finalist even expects anything at all. So just go for it and just make sure you apply. And as Chai was saying, you know, great advice. Make sure you put everything, you know, show your passions. Just be honest by yourself and talk about why you care about what you care about.
Yeah. So you bring up, you know, having to write a bit in the application, and, you know, writing isn't just part of the application, but you go on to use it in your career. I'm sure you've used it a lot in your college career so far. But what advice do you have to starting to write, not just an application answer, but to writing in general? How do you start putting pen to paper?
So there are a couple things. One is you should be able to explain what you know. Like I would say before you start any project, you should know how to describe your project in 100 words. You'll come across this in applications for different competitions, but they'll ask you to write like a layman's summary. So basically, like you just write a very simplistic explanation. So know what you want to write. And I think when it comes to writing in general, just put something on the paper. Like it's always the most difficult part is actually getting started because you have a lot of ideas flowing. So you just get it on paper and you may have to rewrite it multiple times. I remember like I actually competed in another competition that Reba mentioned called Regeneron. And I remember writing multiple drafts of my introduction just so that it would make sense. So never feel like you're daunted by what like the whole writing process in general. It's a tough process, but everyone goes through it. So yeah. David, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, all great pieces of advice there. I think maybe one small thing to add is perhaps one of the most important parts of being able to, I guess, have good writing is just having it organized well, that it's easily understandable. And so, you know, I don't remember exactly what the essays for Broadcom were asking for, but just make sure that you take the time to make it very succinct and that you make it organized in a way that anyone who reads it can understand it.
I know from personal experience, I have difficulty organizing my ideas because they may like an essay might make sense to me the way I've organized it. But having somebody else read over is like the best option because they can tell you whether it makes sense or not. So yeah, make sure like you have, it can be a friend or it could be your teacher or your parents, but if you don't feel comfortable with the way you've written something, go to someone else.
Yeah, definitely. Great pieces of advice. So I want to kind of ask a different question that we've talked a little bit about already, but what opportunities have opened up to you because of Broadcom Masters? I know, you know, we kind of talked about where you guys both are right now, having gone through your first year of college, Chai, and David just having graduated high school and about to go on to college, and both of you have also competed in society competitions. So how do you feel that, you know, Broadcom Masters maybe helped get you to where you are?
Feel free to go, David.
Yeah, so I think it certainly is. The entire process is, I mean, Broadcom Masters is just a very transformative experience. I don't know if I've said that already, but I think the reason it's so transformative, and in so many different ways, I think one of them of which is that you get to meet a lot of cool people and hear about a lot of awesome opportunities. I know, like, the people that I met through my Broadcom Masters finalist week, I still remain with, like, very close friends with them to this very day. And, you know, they're also doing very cool things, and, you know, I've collaborated with them on different projects, on different, you know, some not science, some science, you know, all kinds of different things. And I think some of the main opportunities that you get are just simply meeting a lot of awesome people, whether that's your other fellow finalists, you know, other people who perhaps maybe organize the fair, or even the judges who come and talk to you. I think you get a lot of cool opportunities from that. Also, I just think that the experience, it really teaches you a lot. As Chai was saying earlier, you know, it teaches you to be more confident about what you know, and it also makes you a lot more curious to learn about more things. So I think it's really hard to measure, you know, what kind of opportunities it gives you, but by far, definitely, it's immeasurable because the experience is really transformative.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the most important thing I mentioned earlier, but like confidence. It gave me the confidence to pursue what I wanted. When I went into high school, I wanted to actually my research in oil spills actually led me down to cancer research, and I wasn't very confident. Before, like I knew during my freshman year of high school, I wanted to join a cancer research lab, but I didn't have the confidence to go. And that's when I actually got the call to for Broadcom. And after the competition, I remember feeling good. I just remember feeling confident. I remember right afterwards emailing a bunch of labs and actually like putting myself out there because I knew that I felt like I had the capabilities to go and pursue what I wanted. So I can't really exactly you can't really like measure the like amount of opportunities like it has given like Broadcom. I can't really measure how like Broadcom gave like the opportunities Broadcom gave me, but I can for sure say it gave me the confidence to pursue what I wanted, and that's why I ended up pursuing cancer research, and that's why now I can like like that's why when I came to Princeton as well, I'm continuing my path of pursuing my passions, I guess. Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And I think that ties back to what you said earlier about how just the whole process itself kind of helped you, both of you, hone your interests, and kind of give you a better grasp of what you might want to keep doing. So I think that's also definitely a big plus of the whole, not even just the competition part of it, but the application starting now. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I want to kind of tie back into something that, David, I think you said earlier that you weren't expecting it. You weren't expecting to become a semifinalist or a finalist. And I think that that's what a lot of nominees feel. I think probably 99.9% aren't expecting to become semifinalists or finalists. And so what advice or what attributes do you think elevate a person to become a Broadcom master? It's a toughie.
Yeah, that's kind of tough. I think one thing about Broadcom Masters is that I think it's hard to characterize with one kind of attribute because I mean Broadcom Masters come from diverse backgrounds. They study diverse things. They have diverse interests, and I think that they all have their own sort of passion. No matter where they come from or what they do, they care about what they care about, and I think they whether that's doing research on oil spills or studying the environment or doing cancer research, everyone they have their own passion and they care deeply about it. They care about it enough that they want to solve the problems in that field, and I think the attributes that make Broadcom Masters Broadcom Masters is the fact that they're willing to put themselves out there and be passionate about these subjects and try to innovate solutions, solve problems, and just go about that. So I think at the very heart of it, Broadcom Masters, they're innovators, they're scientists, they're thinkers, and I think that's some of the qualities that make a Broadcom Master.
Awesome. Anything to add to that, Shai?
No, that's exactly what I meant.
Cool.
Perfect. On the same page. So now I kind of want to shift gears and ask you both. So, it might be a little bit farther down the line for some of the applicants on watching today, but both of you have participated in society competitions. David, you did ISAF. Chai, you did the Science Talent Search. So could you just give a short little synopsis, each of you, about your experience in those competitions, just to give a little bit more information about them?
Yeah, so I participated in Regeneron. So I was one of the 40 finalists selected for the final competition. We all, in a similar vein, okay, actually, I would say it's a little bit different from Broadcom in the sense that it's a bit more of an individual competition. But we're I guess a simple way to put it is we're all evaluated on our projects as well, but we're also evaluated on our general scientific aptitude. So how we reason, how we think as scientists. And we are like putting those together. That's how they ultimately wanted to, I guess that's it. I don't know another way to describe it. It's a very weird type of competition, but it was definitely a great experience. But in a similar vein to Broadcom, one of the most important things is the people that you'll meet. I actually go to college with many of my many of the finalists I met last year, and there's a kinship that you develop through these competitions that's honestly the best thing about participating in SSP programs.
Thanks, Chai. I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess on ISEF, ISEF is very, very similar to Broadcom Masters, I would say. But if it's more of a traditional science fair in the sense that if you thought, like, when you said science fair, what's the first kind of idea that pops in your head? It'd probably be something like ISEF, where people, they have all their trifold boards and they go to one giant convention center and they all present their project. But I think when we say the word science fair, a lot of times we think of sort of a competition of sorts. But I think that it doesn't really characterize what ISEF is, because ISEF it's really an experience where you have lots of fun, you meet some amazing people from around the world, and as Chai was saying, there's kind of kinship. You meet a lot of really close friends that you become friends with, even many years past. And although you are presenting research, and although it is somewhat of a competition, you really don't feel the competition aspect. This is like Broadcom Masters, where everyone is very close together and you have a lot of fun. And so I really loved it. Loved it enough that I went twice, and so I think it's a great opportunity. So if you apply to Broadcom Masters, whether or not you hear back with good news or not, certainly go try for ISF as well.
Yeah, I think with like science fair, like just piggybacking off of that a little bit. When you think about science fair, you tend to think of like an individual competition, but like I think SSP programs are like Intel, Regeneron, Broadcom are more focused on developing like a team like ethic. So like I think like out of my Broadcom master's experience, I learned the most important lesson I learned was how to become a better team member, because you're divided into teams for the competition, and I learned what it meant to be not only a leader but also a member of like a group. And it's something I not only carry through like these competitions, but I also it's like lessons that I carry through life. And now I think I've become like a better person as a result of learning how to interact with others, form these bonds and like listen to others in general. So yeah.
Great. So now before we turn it over to our chat questions, we just have one last question for you, and this one is maybe a little bit more fun, but what are some things that you guys enjoy outside of science? I mean, you guys are real people. You're not just doing science projects all the time. So what are some things that you enjoy, and have you ever found that those your interests and your science happen to intersect? David, why don't you take it away?
Sure, absolutely. So I guess one thing that I really love doing is I love music. And I play the guitar, I play the violin, I just play the piano, and I love to sing as well. And so I think a lot of times people say, there's a science to music, and when you're in the act of music, it's kind of hard to understand that there is a science to it. But I think when you take a step back, you realize that there really is a beauty to how music works, and to how everything is so strangely yet very orderly in the way that it's composed. So I think music very much so has a direct relationship to science. It's kind of hard to say where that relationship lies. A lot of people say it's very inherently related, and I think that's true. But I think also just sort of the general ideas behind them that make you really interested in them are very similar. So I think that's one thing.
Okay, Chai, what about you?
Yeah, I actually pick up various hobbies throughout the years, but recently I've come into calligraphy. So I actually really enjoy just drawing with like various things. Like sometimes I'll take anything that's around me and I'll try to draw very nice letters with them. And in general, I think I also enjoy sports like tennis. But I don't think I've ever really thought about the scientific aspects of those. I just enjoy my hobbies outside of,
Mine too.
just thinking sometimes.
Okay, to take some time off from this
Yeah.
heavy thinking as well. So
Like,
no
a bit of rest occasionally.
Awesome. So we are just going to take a couple of seconds to scroll through some of the questions that have been coming in and ask those to Chai and David in a minute.
So one question I had at the beginning was, were you guys nervous when you were at Broadcom Masters? And what were can you even remember any questions that were asked you at Broadcom Masters? David, how about you start?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure if the question is asking about the final this week or simply applying. I would say when I applied, I wasn't nervous at all. I wasn't expecting anything. I just sort of hit the button and forgot about it and had a summer of my enjoyed my summer. But I guess during the week, I was a little bit nervous because I mean it's sort of like you're traveling somewhere far away. One of my first times traveling in a plane even. So I traveled far away and it was kind of a new experience, but I think it was nervous in a good way. It's very exciting, very sort of feeling the anticipation. So I think it's a very good kind of nervous. As for the questions, I don't really remember. Maybe Chai could help you. So.
Like what kind of questions? Like questions I had?
Or like questions I think maybe that like the judges had or
during your challenges.
Yeah.
Well, I just remember the challenges. Okay, so one of the challenges actually was like to propel a rocket using Alka-Seltzer and water. And I remember that was probably the most formative experience of my entire time there, because all of us were we participated in groups, but all of us were trying to in my team we're trying to like do individual parts and like try to launch rockets individually, and we were not working together at all. And we soon realized like that we weren't really listening to one another. And I remember it like when we all like hit that moment where we realized we were supposed to actually be working together. It was a really good like formative moment, because you have to realize that the people around you are they have a lot of insight as well. So if you work together with them, you can create so much more. And we when we finally realized that we all had like different insights that could help us like propel the rocket better, we were able to reach like the target height, and it was like the best moment ever. But yeah, I can't remember anything else specifically, but it was a great time. I don't think I was really nervous during or after, like during the competition, because I was just like focused on having fun with everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you already made it,
Yeah.
Those of you listening in who are you've just been nominated to complete the Broadcom Masters application, that is a huge win in and of itself. Being the top 10% of middle school students around the country is a huge accomplishment. So as Chai was saying, once you just keep going from here, there's nothing to lose, and there's no need to be kind of nervous about what could happen next. So we hope you all continue to work on those applications and submit in the next 2 weeks.
All right, now we have a big important question that I think that we're all still asking ourselves. How do you balance your work and your life?
Your work life and
your work life and your social life. David, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. The question was balance your work and social life, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, I mean, no one really knows how to. It's a question that no one really has a perfect answer to. I think we're all trying to figure it out ourselves, and I think sort of one thing that really helps me is just stay in the moment and make sure that although you're on top of things, that you're enjoying what you do. Don't try to overburden yourself with too many things. Just focus on maybe a few things that you enjoy, and don't try to spread yourself too thin.
Yeah, and this is something like it's very difficult, but time management is definitely a key aspect to that. it's up to you to, make time for yourself. So be sure to, make time for both your like studies, but also to like with your like friends and like with your family, because it's hard, especially like as you like get older and like you have to like go through high school and then college, like you have more responsibilities. So, just sometimes it's just important to like dial it back down a little bit and just remember that, you know, there are other things besides, work per se.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, let's see. So there's a question that's more Reva and I can answer, but someone asked if the science that you like your science fair project has to be groundbreaking. Well, maybe you guys can answer. David, do you feel like your science fair project was groundbreaking? And you can say yes. I mean, it might be like.
No, I don't think so. No, definitively 100%. No, I don't think it was groundbreaking at all.
Okay. What about you, Chai? Groundbreaking?
I don't think it was groundbreaking per se, but I was like, I put like, okay, so my actual project title was like a non-conventional approach. So I was like putting forth my ideas. So like it wasn't necessarily groundbreaking, but it didn't mean I wasn't trying to present something new to the world.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you can do as a middle school student. Of course, you're not going to be, in a college lab producing college work. It's just what we want to see what you're interested in and what questions you have and how you answer them.
Right. We basically, just to piggyback off what everyone's already said, you certainly don't need to be submitting a groundbreaking research project. The judges and evaluators want to see that you kind of understand the research that you did, whatever that project is about, and why you did it. So just being able to kind of explain those reasonings and the processes behind the work that you did is a big part of it.
Yeah, I think just to like write off of that as well, like just believe in what you're doing. Like I believe, like even though my project may not have been groundbreaking, I still believed in what I was saying. I believed that I was like making a difference with like the approach that I was putting forth towards cleaning oil spills, and I was passionate about it. So I think that came across, and I'm really proud with like what I did in middle school.
Yeah,
it's a learning process.
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Definitely is, and I think that kind of goes along with some of the, other questions that we were being asked. You both have talked about how, it was what you did in the application was put forward yourself and your ideas and your thoughts, and that is really what the judges and evaluators want to see. They want to see you coming through in the application. And so part of that application process is not just about the research that you conducted, but how you think. So those personal essay questions are just another way for the judges and evaluators to get to know you as a student beyond your research project. Same with the part 4 of the application, which asks more about personal interests. Shai talked about how Regeneron, the science talent search, is kind of about an individual competition. Broadcom Masters is as well. So part of what you'll be evaluated on is the research, but part of that is also part of what you'll be evaluated on is you as a student, as a scientist. And so that is why we have some of those extra questions in the application.
Yeah. So I think we'll take one or two more questions. So one I have here asks, when the judges were asking you questions, what did you do if you weren't able to answer a question? David, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, always be honest. If you don't know something, you can explain you don't know. And I think that's it's okay to admit that you don't know, because not everyone knows everything. And so I feel, in fact, probably no one knows everything. I don't know about, sometimes the judges might be specialists in what they do, but, it's always okay to admit that you don't know, that you don't know everything. And I think when they ask you something that you don't know, you can always make your own kind of educated guess. You can say, based off what I do understand, I think it's probably going to be something like this. But always qualify that by saying, this is kind of from your understanding and that this might not be right. Obviously, if it's something that you can search up, you can say, this is something that I can figure out later, or I can conduct more research on. But yeah, just be honest with whatever you answer with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not always about knowing the right answer, but it's about how you kind of think through it and reason through it.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I came.
Oh,
Chai, I think
Chai,
we lost
you're
you for
frozen.
a second.
Yeah, I was gonna say I came up that is not known. Oh, I think might get screen cutting out.
Oh, you're good now, I think.
I think, yeah, we can hear you. It's a little choppy, but
okay.
keep going.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, like that's an issue that you'll like come up with like frequently. Like I remember when I was competing in Regeneron, I had multiple questions that I didn't know the answer to, but judges are not there to necessarily judge you. They also want to see like how you think. Like how you think is also just as important. So show that you're like willing to try and willing to use what you know to like come up with solutions or like hypothesize what you like think might be the answer. So never like feel bad about not knowing an answer, because no one knows everything. So
For sure. Even PhD scientists who have been in their fields for years and years, they're still asking questions. That's why they have a job, and that's why they're doing the research that they're doing. So great piece of advice.
All right. I'm going to finish up with this last question, which says, what is the one thing you would say that you learned through your Broadcom project that sticks with you through life afterwards? David.
Yeah, for me, I think the one thing I learned is probably how to work well with other people, and that I think, for example, in Broadcom Masters, it's we mentioned earlier that it's sort of like a team event. You kind of get grouped into teams. I think it's there that I sort of realized that science is very much so collaborative. No matter what you do, even from the very beginning of Broadcom Masters all the way to if you end up becoming a PhD in or a professor of some kind doing research in a lab. I think science is propelled forward because of collaboration, because people share ideas with each other, because people work together, and I think that's something that's really stayed with me since the very beginning. So even now today, whatever I do, it's always working with other people, and I think that's something that's I'm very thankful for. I think it's great to be working with other people, and I think it's a very rewarding experience to be doing that.
Yeah,
Great.
definitely.
Chai, one word.
Yeah, it's same. Yeah, I think like a lot of the lessons you learn from Broadcom are much more like universal. Like I finally learned what it meant to work together, I think, through Broadcom. Like I said, like with the whole rocket thing, like you realize that you have to be able to communicate well with one another, and that was a skill I definitely learned through the competition, and it's something I carry through in everything I do now. Because if you don't effectively communicate with others, and if you don't try to work together with others, science won't evolve. We won't really grow as people, or like our knowledge won't grow as well. So you have to remember that we are all working towards like one goal, to like understand more. So and I think competitions like Broadcom really help reinforce that idea.
For sure. Well said. Thank you both. That concludes our webinar for today. Thank you to Chai and David for helping us out and answering all the questions that we had and that the applicants had. For those of you who might have just tuned in or tuned in a little bit late, don't worry. We have recorded this webinar and we'll be posting it online in the next couple of days to our YouTube page, and we'll also have it up on Fluid Review in the video resources tab as well. So yeah, good luck to everyone who's still working on their application. We hope you continue to submit. We'll try to hold another webinar before the application closes, but stay tuned on the details for when that will be. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, always feel free to email us at masters@societyforscience.org, and we can answer any and all of your questions until the application deadline. So good luck to everyone.
All right. Thanks, David. Thank you, Chai.